Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the annual general meeting of the SAIE. I would just like to welcome the honoured guests and the presidents of affiliate societies. Very welcome. Before we start, just a few webinar considerations. Attendees are reminded to ensure the volume is turned up on their device. Ensure you have a stable internet connection. This will ensure the streaming and audio will run smoothly. Attendees can ask questions via the questions panel located within the GoToWebinar control panel. By default, the control panel is located on the right-hand side of your screen. The chat function is reserved for webinar organizers and panelists who communicate with attendees. Attendees will not be able to chat with each other, however, are encouraged to ask questions. A recording of this meeting will be made available on the SAIE YouTube channel, SAIE TV. The recording will also be made available on the SAIE website under the events drop-down menu in the section past events and webinars. This page is updated regularly, so ensure you check back as often as possible for new uploads and subscribe to our YouTube channel. A certificate of attendance will be issued a few days after this webinar. I'd like to introduce our SAIE President, Mrs. SAIEE Gura. Next slide, Khada. Mrs. Gura has been part of the energy industry in South Africa for over 25 years. She started her career as a consultant and later was appointed as the City Electrical Engineer for East London. With more than 2 decades of experience as an electrical engineer, SAIEE achieved numerous qualifications, including a Bachelor in Engineering, which is Electrical and Electronics, Masters in Business Administration, and Government Certificate of Competency. Currently, she's the Business Development Specialist for Transmission and Distribution and EPC within ACTOM. SAIEE served as the Association of Municipal Utilities President from 2008 to 2010 and served on the Executive Council until 2011. She was the first female president of the AMEU. She is the fellow member of the SAIE and serves as a council member since 2012. She has chaired the Professional Development and Finance Committees and is currently the president of the SAIE. She recently launched the SAIE Women in Engineering chapter, which will strive to promote women interests and champion and empowerment programs within the SAIE and broader electrical engineering fraternity. I hand you over now to Mrs. SAIEE Gura. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Minx, for that introduction. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen and honored guests. Welcome once again to our annual general meeting for 2021. Maybe just to reiterate, so if you look onto your handouts, you will see that there is 3 handouts. The first one basically is the presidential address details in terms of Prof. Maharaj's address. The second one is the AGM minutes, and the third one is the annual report. So the next item on the agenda is the AGM minutes. So you are able to download these handouts as well, so you can go through it. So I take it that the minutes of the annual general meeting that was held on the 31st of March 2020 has been tabled, and I call for someone to propose it. So you can raise your hand if you propose the minutes.
We have William Stuckey, thank you.
Thank you for that, William. Next, if I could just have a seconder that could also raise their hands, please.
It was Emilia Michali. Emilia Michali.
Thank you very much for that. Next, we've got the annual report and statement of accounts for 2020. I'm going to start with the annual report. I take it that the annual report has been read. However, I will be giving you a short presentation of my year as a president. So firstly, it is indeed my honor and privilege to present my annual report for the year 2020-2021 as the 111th president of the South African Institute of Electrical Engineers. The AGM for 2020 and the year that followed was definitely an unprecedented AGM, and it was a year of a global pandemic, as we all know, a year of adversities. And the restrictions of physical contact forced us to immediately transform digitally and quite rapidly. We were told about the lockdown a year ago, and we literally had a week in which to prepare for the AGM to go digital. So we immediately started testing different platforms. We started buying licenses. We started training everyone on it. And we had to have a couple of dry runs. And for the first time, we were ready with a historic online AGM attended by close to 200 members. So currently, all our meetings in the last year have migrated to online meetings. With regard to the economic situation, I think we're all aware that we are in a dire situation globally. We've been dealt with a heavy blow with cancellations of in-person courses, as this was a major revenue stream. Members were canceling memberships due to the harsh economic situation as well. And linked to that, the SAIE finances were also under threat. So what we did is we immediately set out to implement a recovery plan. We looked at salary cuts, we looked at online courses, we found methods to actually recover a lot of our membership fees, outstanding membership fees, ways to reduce the expenditure and reduce the drawdowns that we did. And these will be detailed in the presentation that will be done shortly by the Honorary Treasurer. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as I mentioned, our membership was definitely under threat, especially because companies were cancelling all voluntary associations as the first cause to cut down on expenditure as well. And we found also a couple of members were not paying because of obviously the situation that we were in. So we could not hold any of the courses face to face. And surprisingly though, we were able to increase our subscription membership collection, which was a good thing. In terms of digital transformation, and this was the theme of our immediate past president, George Debo, we managed, in fact, to rapidly transform a lot of the things that we were doing at the SAIE to a digital platform. So all our meetings, like I said, went online, our webinars went online, courses, and we also found that we were sending close to 600,000 emails to our members, which was becoming a bit of a nuisance. So what we did is we condensed all that information into the SAIE Chronicles, which was also launched last year. So one of the things that we decided to do as well was that we wanted to try and attract new members, and we wanted to create new interest, in particular with the different chapters and sections that were quite dormant or had not yet kickstarted. So under the power and energy section, we had the nuclear chapter, we had the energy storage. Under the electronics and software section, we had cybersecurity, computing, control and automation. And transportation section had the railway electrification. And systems section, women in engineering, entrepreneurship and innovation, and asset management were all the new sections that we actually got up and going with new chair people and new committees and new members. In terms of the annual events, I'm just going to touch on a few of the events that we had. We basically had close to 60 webinars just in the year alone. So this is just a brief snapshot of what we actually had. So after the AGM, the first order of a president obviously is the presidential address. And my theme was the 5th Industrial Revolution, which I did on the 7th of April 2020. If you want details of this, it is in my report as well, which is part of the annual report. And all these webinars and presentations, addresses are all available on the SAIE website. We then had the President's Invitation Lecture by David Nichols, and his topic was the anomaly of a supply of last resort in the new distributed, deregulated and electricity supply model on the 23rd of June 2020. We had a series of asset management webinars in June, ST Talks as well in June, and we launched the women's chapter on the 14th of July 2020, and the talk was Leadership in a Time of Crisis and Uncertainty. I also participated in a TEDx talk on the future of women in engineering on the 4th of August 2020. The nuclear chapter had numerous webinars. It's like they suddenly had endless webinars going, which was quite interesting. And in fact, I managed to attend most of them in the months of July to September 2020. Then the women's chapter presented Energy Transition, Repositioning Women in New Reality on the 12th of August 2020. The Power and Energy section had webinars in the months of June to September 2020. Rotating Machines had 3 webinars in the months of September to October, and the Load Research chapter had a record 12 webinars from February to August. So I think they beat all the other chapters, and maybe it's a challenge to the other chapters to also continue along those lines. We then had the 69th Bernard Price Memorial Lecture, which is held annually in memory of Bernard Price, and it was given by none other than his great-grandson, Roger Price. And his topic was actually quite relevant in terms of the lineage, and it was on leaving a legacy, details of which can also be found in the report. We had numerous What Now technical talks, and these were held mainly in November. Then the Energy Storage chapter launched on the 5th of November, and their main theme was unlocking and enabling storage as a sector in South Africa. We launched the Entrepreneurship and Innovation chapter on the 24th of November. And like I mentioned previously, the SAIEE Chronicles was also launched in November. In December, the Cybersecurity chapter launched, and we celebrated the International Women's Day on the 8th of March 2021 this year. I also did a keynote address on breaking stereotypes on the 16th of March 2021 this year. So in terms of the other things that we basically did was, in terms of the bursaries, we awarded bursaries to 10 students in 2020, and thanks to Siakaya, who was one of our main sponsors. And the good news is that 4 of those 10 students actually completed their degree, and we've only got 6 to continue. We are also looking at increasing the sponsorships from various companies, and once we get that, we might be able to increase the number of bursaries that we also issue out. In terms of the presidential legacy project, we normally have a golf day where we would donate whatever proceedings we get to a charity of choice. Unfortunately, in terms of the COVID situation, we could not have the golf day. So we selected the PEP lay-by project. This actually assists people, particularly women, who cannot afford to pay for the essentials, especially for school-going children. So they put their requirements on a lay-by until it is fully paid. So through this initiative, and you will find the link in the SAIEE Chronicles, or you could walk into any PEP store where you could make a donation as little as 20 Rand to paying in full one of those lay-by packages. And I think this would make a huge difference to the needy out there. So I want to take this opportunity to please ask everyone that is here today to at least make a small donation towards this project, because it will definitely help a lot of people. In terms of the centers, I want to take this opportunity also to thank our Honorary Vice President, Roger Cormack, who was actually chairing all the centers. We've got 9 centers, and I think they actually held a lot of successful and well-attended webinars, and they had monthly meetings. And this also gave the centers an opportunity to connect with head office and to also re-establish the feedback link to council, because with the online meetings, we were able to actually have feedback from all the centers that were participating either in council or in the center meetings. So this was truly amazing, because we normally would not have had that kind of linkage. So coming to the end, in terms of acknowledgement and thanks, I firstly would like to thank all the office bearers, in particular Prince, Sunil, Jan, and obviously the incoming junior president, all the EXCO members, there's too many to actually name, all the council members, all the committees that have been formed, all the sections and chapters, and all the centers. And in particular, I think all the chair people of the current year that has passed, because it was a lot of hard work. It was not easy to actually do these webinars. It took a lot of work in the background. So I'd really like to thank all those chair people and the members of those committees, sections, and chapters and centers. I'd like to thank each and every one of the members that have participated in our numerous webinars and online meetings, etc. And I would also like to thank the SAIE staff, in particular, all those that have worked very closely to me. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank especially the women that have been on the SAIE Council, because I think you guys made a lot of the things that I mentioned actually happen. And last but not least, I'd like to thank my family, my husband Davi and my children Kaylee and Keegan, for all the support that they gave me. But my family is also Actum, who I work for. So I'd like to thank Andries, who is part of council as well, and an immediate past president, who is our chairman. I'd like to thank the group CEO, Mervyn, and my two CEOs, Tembela Kaza and Sabranel. So on behalf of myself, thank you very much for the year that I've had. It has been quite a hectic year, but I think I'm quite glad to be handing over to Sunil now. So I thank you on that. And then moving on, I would like to invite Stan Bridgens, who is the Honorary Treasurer, to present the financial statements. And while he's presenting, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat box. But before I hand over to Stan, if I can just ask Mings to read out his CV, please.
Thank you, Mrs. President. I introduce you now to our Honorary Treasurer, Mr. Stan Bridgens. Stan left school due to poor financial circumstances after completing Standard 8, which is today in grade 10, and was indentured as an apprentice electrician. During the next 5 years, he completed matric at night school, completed a National Technician's Diploma Mechanical and Electrical Engineering, and successfully attained by self-study the Government Certificate of Competency Electrical Works. At 22 years old, he was employed as an engineer in the field, and later he was appointed the youngest distribution engineer responsible for much of the distribution system of Johannesburg. Later, Stan managed a large metro workshop complex at Reuben to be appointed Director of Technical Services for the Johannesburg Electricity Department. Stan retired from the metro after 42 years of service and consulted for 3 years before accepting the job of CEO of the SAIE, which he did successfully for 12 years. Stan is a professional engineer registered with EXA. He's a fellow of the SAIE and the SA Academy of Engineering. Stan joined the SAIE as a student in 1962 and received his 50-year certificate of membership in 2012. He was elected president in 1998 and 1999, and now serves as honorary treasurer for the last 2 years after retiring as CEO of the SAIE. I introduce you, Mr. Stan Bridgens.
Stan, if you can just unmute your mic and put your camera on.
Stan? Just unmute yourself, Stan.
I am unmuted as I see it on my screen.
Good. Now we can hear you. Please continue. You muted again, Stan. There we go. Stan, you muted again.
I'm unmuted.
Yes, please continue. Stan, you muted again. Okay, you unmuted, you can speak.
I'm not doing anything here, and my screen is showing that I am. Right, thank you. I've prepared a few short slides in summary of the annual financial statement, and questions are invited thereafter to answer them adequately. So you, Madam Chair, will then seek approval of these annual of these financial at the annual general meeting. Slide 2, please. Can I ask for slide 2, Sarah? Yes.
Gerda, next slide.
This is the first slide, his first slide he must talk to.
Stan? We lost Stan. Okay, I think what I'll do is I'll stand in for Stan until he's back again. So in terms of
Sorry, Mrs. President, I have just spoken to Mr. Bridgens. He's logging back in. We lost him. We lost him.
Okay, so we'll give him 2 minutes to log back in. Apologies for this.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, that's better. Mr. Bridgens, you don't have to have your video on. I think it's bad connectivity if you switch on your video. Please continue.
Yeah, I seem to have lost you. Yeah, I'm back up. Can you hear me all right now?
Perfect, thank you.
I apologize for the delay to this meeting. I have prepared a few short slides, and I hope to answer questions thereafter. And then after, through you, Madam President, to seek approval of these financials for 2020 at this meeting. So slide 2 is an overview, and I think I'm pleased to report that the audit is unqualified, therefore accurate and true. Given the macro poor economic climate, these results are surprisingly better than expected. Voluntary entities rely on positive sentiment, and sadly this was absent during the period under review for obvious reasons, pandemic. Lockdown 5 at level 5 caused disarray in the entire SAIE business. Changes to online activities and the monetizing of courses and webinars caused delays, thus shortening the year operations considerably. Needless to say, the revenue streams were adversely affected. The 2020 budget was prudently reviewed twice and expenditure tapered downwards accordingly. Concomitantly, huge efforts were made to maintain and increase revenue income. It must be acknowledged that the administration has reacted well and sacrificed much in order to achieve these financial results. These results are less than was originally budgeted for, however. They do not reflect the effort and the sacrifice made by the administration. These results are better than expected, and I thank all those who contributed to the well-being of the Institute in these times. And when things get tough, as the saying goes, the tough gets going, and this is going to have to continue. Slide 3, please. These are some highlights of the financials. Publications revenue, seen a turnaround of some 374,000 Rand. And this is due mainly to what now published online and much effort done in attracting advertising. Commendable effort by staff shows members' subscriptions also increased by 3.5% over last year. And this is despite, as the President has mentioned, there being less paying members. Companies in their austere efforts have cut paying voluntary professional fees for their employees. The last point there is the huge reduction in operating expenditure. It reflects a reduction of 14% over the last year. Some fixed and variable operating costs were reduced to lessen the pandemic impact. What is commendable is that staff salaries in the centre annual allocations were voluntarily cut, and prudent management was throughout these dire circumstances. Slide 4, please. This is financials that also cause some unease and discomfort. No, just go back one slide, please. Yeah, that's the one. These financials cause unease and some discomfort, and the non-current assets are down 3%. Important to note that this figure is due in the main to accumulated depreciation over many years. The actual depreciation for 2020 is 690,000, and it is a portion of this accumulated depreciation that's shown there. The depreciation quantum is also calculated in accordance with the SARS dictates for the assets that have various life cycles. The re-evaluation reserve that is from the equity investments has increased by some 16% over the year end of last year, and should increase more in time. But all predictions are that the yield from investments is going to be flat going forward. The reduced asset values are shown of concern and will be addressed in a recovery plan, as I think has been mentioned by the President. Slide 5, please. The challenges ongoing, which these financials bode, is around the niche of SAIE mentoring. Mentoring income was 432, and the costs were 552,000. Thus, it's costing the SAIE 119,000 for the period under review. Now, SAIE is known for providing professional development, which includes mentoring at below cost. This is an SAIE niche, as I've said, and it's a service that must be exploited because nobody else is better qualified and resourced to do this work. Business model will have to be reviewed for this mentoring. Companies are avoiding what they consider an optional cost of mentoring, and this is essential service that SAIE must nurture. Otherwise, it would, in my view, be reckless for the country. The retention and the enhancement of asset base must be addressed in a recovery plan, as I've mentioned before. Voluntary entities like the SAIE face uncharted territory in the new normal post-pandemic. Therefore, prudent and stringent cost reductions will also be on the cards going forward. And one of the things is the metro billing for water and electricity. The rates are irregular and unfathomable and needs investigation and a remedy found for this significant cost in the operating budget. Slide 6 deals with questions. Thank you. Just a final remarks that I hope will entice collective thought before questions are taken. The premise of the auditors and that of the President is that the SAIE is an ongoing concern. Looking at the balance sheet, you confirm for yourself that the SAIE is an ongoing concern. And no doubt, the SAIE will survive the impact of the pandemic. The question is, however, how successfully will the Institute adapt to the new macro uncharted normal and thrive post-pandemic? Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Stan. Are there any questions for the Honorary Treasurer? You could type it in the question box. I'm looking at it. I don't see any questions. Are you picking up anything, Pat?
No, Madam President, no questions for the Honorary Treasurer as yet.
Okay, so if there are no questions or there are no hands up, can I ask that the annual report and financial statements be adopted? Can I have a proposer, please? You can raise your hand.
We have Mr. George Debo.
And Francois van Beek.
Thank you for that, George. Can I have a seconder as well?
Francois van Beek. Did you get that, Madam President? Thank you.
Thank you for that. So I'm now going to call for a vote for the approval of the annual report and financial statements. So all those in favor need to click agree. Those that are opposed, please click disagree. And those that abstain, click abstain. So can I just have the poll as well, or the vote? So if you can please just select one and submit. We'll just give everyone a minute or so. How is it going, Pat?
Progressing well, Madam President. 74% have voted. 30 seconds to go. 77%, 78% is voted. 15 seconds and then we'll close. Um, 78% have voted. And Madam President, we have 89% agree, 0% disagree, 11% abstain.
Pat, can you just close the poll so that we can actually see you publish it on the screen?
Thank you, Madam President. I've closed the polls. 80% voted, 88% agree, 12% abstain.
Okay, are you able to publish on the screen just for record?
No, ma'am. Minx, can you?
There we go. There we go. We got it now.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to see if I can see this whole thing. Okay. Thank you very much. So I take it that the annual report and financial statements have been adopted. Thank you for that. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda. It's the induction of the incoming president. And firstly, I would like to read out the CV for Professor Sunil Maharaj. Sunil Maharaj is a full professor in the Department of Electrical, Electronic and Computer Engineering and currently the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering, Built Environment and IT at the University of Pretoria, South Africa. He has a combined experience of more than 32 years in the industry as a microwave and RF design engineer, academia and consulting. He holds a BSc Engineering in Electronics, MSc Engineering in Electronics, MSc Operational Telecommunications, and a PhD Engineering. He is also a professional engineer, registered with the Engineering Council of South Africa, EXA, a fellow of the South African Academy of Engineering, fellow of the South African Institute of Electrical Engineers, a senior member of the IEEE. He joined the SAIEE in 1997 and has been a member of the SAIEE for the past 25 years. The IEEE South African section, ComSoc, chapter chair for 5 years, and since 2018, the founding chair of the IEEE SA section VTS chapter. He has been involved in organizing many conferences and technical events such as the IEEE Africon, IEEE ICC 2010, and as a general conference chair for IEEE VTS 2019 Wireless African Conference and the 2020 World Engineering Education Federation and the Engineering Deans Council Conference. He has been the first African Dean to be elected as the Global Engineering Dean Council Chair and will assume the chair position from November 2021 to 2023. Sunil has more than 155 international peer-reviewed conference and journal articles, 2 international patents, and the winner of 10 national and international awards. His research interests are in wireless communications with focus on 5G cognitive radio sensor networks, resource allocation, MIMO systems, and wireless channel modeling. So may I take this opportunity and be the first one to congratulate you, Professor Sunil Maharaj, as the president for the period 2021 to 2022. Congratulations, and over to you now as president.
Gura, thank you very much. Good evening to our office bearers, the members of council, our members at large. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. And I trust all of you and your families are healthy and safe in these difficult times. I certainly like to thank the immediate past president now, Ms. Gura, for the work she did, the sterling work she did in this virtual environment. As we know, she's not a virtual person, but certainly her presidency was very much virtual because all the meetings were held online, all the activities were held online. And of course, there was no opportunity as such for us to meet even the new members on council or the new section chairs and so forth. So I thank her very much for the sterling work she did. And certainly we're hoping the new team, with her involvement as well, to take the SAIEE forward. I certainly also like to thank her husband, Mr. Davi Gaurav, in recognition for his support during this past year as well. So we now move on to the next part of the agenda, where we'll introduce our key members. So I'll introduce our Deputy and Vice President. So I'd like to congratulate Deputy President Prince Moyo, and of course Jan de Kock, who is now Professor Jan de Kock, who is now our Senior Vice President. And we'd like to welcome our new colleague into the fold of the office bearers, Mr. Pascal Motsoasele, who is now has been elected as the Junior Vice President. Pascal, we welcome you and thank you for taking on this reign, and we're looking forward to your contribution in the SAIEE. So, ladies and gentlemen, we now move on to the election of the auditors and the legal advisors. So, I propose that this has been discussed certainly at the Finance and Audit Committee of Council, at EXCO and Council as well. So, I'd like to propose or recommend Messrs. Harris, Bowden and Fontaine be the Institute auditors for the ensuing year, and I'd like to call on a seconder for this proposal. So Minx and Pat, if you can please help us.
Andries Mthethwa.
Andries Mthethwa, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mthethwa, for that. The next one is the legal advisors. So we propose that, again, the discussion through the different subcommittees and through council, that the council be authorized to use Messrs. Wertheim Becker to be elected as the legal advisors for the ensuing year. And I'd like to request and call for a seconder for this recommendation.
We have Mr. John Gosling.
Thank you, John, for that. So we can move on to the next part of the agenda, which is authorization to invest in equities. As you heard from the Honorary Treasurer and the immediate past President, that last year was not a very good year for investments. And certainly we had many discussions with different investment houses in terms of investment and how the investment scenario would look going forward. And certainly one of the things we continue doing as council was to continue to remain or leave our investments in the current portfolios we have. It was basically reckless for us to remove that because we would lose financially. So hence we propose today at this AGM, we'd like to propose that the council be authorized to continue to invest in equities with the three main investment houses that we're currently using, namely Nedbank, Investec and Sanlam. And we'd like to request a seconder in the chat channel to confirm this for us. Thank you. If you can announce this, please, for us.
Joshua Shanyandura.
Thank you, Joshua, for that. Thanks. Yes, and certainly the Finance Committee under now Deputy President Prince Moyo will review these and to see what's the best way moving forward to get best value in our equities. And thank you, colleagues, for that. So certainly we move on to the next point in the agenda, and that's declaration of election of the Honorary Vice President and Honorary Treasurer. So I'm happy to announce under clause 3.8 of the Constitution, Council has elected Mr. Colin Matlatla as Honorary Vice President of the Institute for 2021-2022. And certainly Colin is well known to Council. He has served Council many, many years in a very distinguished role, and he's kindly accepted this nomination that was finally confirmed by Council to take on this role as Honorary Vice President. Mr. Matlatla, I'd like to congratulate you as Honorary Vice President and looking forward to your contribution and working with the different, certainly the different chapters in the country and building the relationship we have across the country so that we can increase our membership and at the same time, importantly, add value to our members in the different parts of the country. Thank you very much indeed. The next part is that basically, again, under clause 3.2 of the Constitution, Council has elected Mr. Stan Bridgens as Honorary Treasurer of the Institute for 2021 and 2022. And certainly he has been Treasurer for the 2020-2021 financial year. And of course, Council has asked him to stay on again for the second year. And I'd like to congratulate Mr. Stan Bridgens as Honorary Treasurer and looking forward, Stan, for your contribution in this, as you mentioned, difficult times and how we exercise financial austerity, but at the same time do innovative things that we can increase the income of the Institute going forward. And thank you very much for your contribution and that you're going to offer us in the next financial year. It's my proud duty as incoming president to basically announce the composition of council for 2021-2022, including the past presidents who have graciously agreed and accepted the invitation to serve on council. So of course, myself as president, I mentioned our deputy president, Prince Moyo, our senior vice president, Professor Jan de Kock, our junior vice president, Pascal Motsuasele, our immediate past president, SAIEE Agm, our honorary treasurer, which I announced most recently, Stan Bridgens, and of course, our honorary vice president, Mr. Colin Matlala. Going on to our 2021-2022 fellows, Jane Boyson Street, Tom Aikbaum, Professor Chandima Gomez, Professor Albert Laisko, Prudence Madiba, Emiliam Charlie, Professor Jan Haram Pretorius, Veer Ramnarayan, and Professor Jerry Walker. Thank you very much. Our 2021-2022 senior members on council, Refilwe Buthelezi, Tsecho Cornelius, Dr. Franz Manganye, James Motladile, Khomotso Setlapelo, Victor Shikowana, Monde Soni, Professor Mbuyu Sumwanyambe, and Dr. Nick West. Our members that will serve on council for 2021-2022 is Dr. Clinton Carter-Brown, Azwi Mamanyuha, Dr. Lesedi Masisi, Professor Fulofelo Nelwamondo, and Shandukani Vulondo. The 2021-2022 chairpersons of the different sections are as follows. The rotating machine section will be led by Jabulani Mbembe, the power and energy section by Esrom Malaji, the electronics and software section by William Stucker, our historical section by Max Clark, our telecommunications section by Albert Laisko, our systems section by Refilwe Buthelezi, our building services, we are still in the process of finalizing that appointment. And then, of course, our chairpersons for 2021-2022 for the different centers, Gauteng Central Center, Sharon Mushabe, Eastern Cape Center, Philip Nicholson, our Free State Center, Joseph George, our KwaZulu-Natal Center, Shepherd Nkosi, our Mpumalanga Center, Nicholas Smith, our Northern Cape Center, Ben Mabizela, our Southern Cape Center, Stein van der Merwe, our Vaal Center, Carlisle Sampson, and our Western Cape Center, Heinrich Rudman. And last but not least, our SAIEE past presidents who accepted the kind invitation to serve on council for the 2021-2022 financial year, Mr. Stan Bridgens, Wolf Kroner, Mike Crouch, George Debo, Dr. Henry Geldenhuys, John Gosling, Dr. Angus Hay, Jacob Mashinjike, T.C. Marikane, Ian McKechnie, Andries Ntetwa, Professor Pat Naidu, and Mr. Paul van Niekerk. So we now move on to the next part of the program for today. Today, because of COVID-19, we normally have a special event. Normally we have the banquet hosted by the president, and that was not possible because of the situation, especially in January, February, when we had a second wave and we had to kind of cancel the banquet. So this year we decided to incorporate as part of the AGM, the joint IEEE SAIEE award. So as members would know, that we have this SAIEE IEEE Distinguished Volunteer Award that promotes the spirit of volunteerism by recognizing a volunteer active in the IEEE, SAIEE, or both organizations. The volunteer makes or made a valuable contribution to the electrical engineering profession in South Africa. He or she promotes the electrical, electronic, computer engineering profession in South Africa within the IEEE designated fields, or meaningfully contributes to one of the social challenges in South Africa through the application of electrical, electronic, or computer engineering. I have the privilege and honor to call upon the IEEE SA section chair, Mr. David Oyedokun, to say a few words and then announce the 2020 winner. David, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Professor Sonil Maharaj, Deputy President, Mr. Prince Moyo, Senior Vice President, Professor Jan de Kock, Junior Vice President, Mr. Pascal Motsoasele, Immediate Past President, Mrs. Sai Gora, Honorary Treasurer, Mr. Stan Regents, Honorary Vice President, Mr. Colin Matlala, distinguished chairmen and chairwomen of technical sections and chapters of the SAIEE, past presidents of the SAIEE, fellows, senior members and students of the SAIEE, members of the IEEE present. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for this invitation to attend this AGM of the SAIEE to announce the recipient of the 2021 SAIEE IEEE Joint Distinguished Volunteer Award. Mr. President, the SAIEE IEEE Joint Distinguished Volunteer Award was indeed established in 2013 to promote the spirit of volunteerism by recognizing a volunteer active in the IEEE, SAIEE, or both organizations. The award criteria required that the volunteer has made a valuable contribution to the electrical engineering profession in South Africa and promotes the electrical electronic engineering profession in South Africa within SAIEE IEEE distinguished field, or meaningfully contributes to one of the social challenges in South Africa through the application of electrical or electronic engineering. A duly constituted joint committee was set up in 2020 to prepare the call for nominations, review nominations, and decide on who the recipient will be tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, the joint committee received a good number of outstanding applications from candidates, which made selecting the recipient a non-trivial task. Mr. President, the person whom the Joint Committee unanimously voted for is a professor of research in the Faculty of Engineering and the Built Environment at the University of Johannesburg, South Africa. He is indeed a fellow of the South African Academy of Engineers, a fellow of the South African Institute of Electrical Engineers, a senior member of the IEEE, and a member of IET and SIGRE. This distinguished volunteer has an extensive track record of volunteerism within the IEEE and the SAIEE. We have testimonial of his work to motivate young members of not only electrical but also mechanical and civil disciplines on the importance of contributing to voluntary professional institutes such as the IEEE and SAIEE. He has given much of his time to recruiting specialists in electrical and associated disciplines, to electrical engineering in becoming expert contributors while enhancing the intellectual capital diversity of professional voluntary institutions such as the IEEE and SAIEE. Recently, he nurtured the creation of the nuclear chapter within the structures of the SAIEE, the composition of which are experts in nuclear physics and engineering. He served as the chair of the Power and Energy Society of the IEEE South Africa section in 2012, president of the SAIEE in 2014, during which terms he spearheaded activities dedicated to volunteers in our beloved professional fraternity, electrical engineering. He initiated the notion of creating a benevolent fund for members because it felt that the many older and long retired members could benefit from the devastation of inflation. The COVID-19 pandemic, which is still with us, has shown the dire need of such a fund to be created, and his notion is becoming a reality at this time. Thanks to his perseverance and his efforts to enlist specialists to voluntarily design and oversee the implementation of a model benevolent fund. Mr. President, the Joint Award Committee is convinced, indeed, that the recipient is a true professional volunteer who seeks to enhance the life of the community by engaging and encouraging, as well as training strong specialist engineers involved with and driven by the ethos of voluntary organizations such as IEEE and the SAIEE. Mr. President, this volunteer is none other than Professor Pat Naido. Congratulations to Professor Pat Naido on being the recipient of this prestigious SAIEE IEEE Joint Volunteer Award. May I, at this point, ask that Professor Pat Naido show his video feed that all may see him and hopefully the smile on his face. Thank you, Professor Pat Naido.
Thank you. But why me? Thank you. Chairman of IEEE and President of SAIEE, thank you for the nomination. Thank you for the election. Thank you for the recognition. You left me speechless, but I think at this point, maybe I could recall the words of ABB's Percy Barnevik. Think global, act local. I think that's very appropriate. The issues of the day are challenging. They are complex. Most of the challenges are outside of mainstream engineering. And the thing going into time, the boundary conditions for our members to work in are going to be tightening and getting much more strenuous for delivery of results to society. But together, IEEE and SAIEE, and also our sister institutes, SIGRE and the Southern African Power Pool, and the other disciplines of mechanical engineering, civil engineering, chemical engineering, the Academy of Engineers, I think we can rise above the challenges. And we certainly can give body to our collective vision of advancing technology for humanity. So let me say thank you to the colleagues. Thank you for your confidence in our workings, and let us continue to serve and to deliver a better quality of life for all our people.
Thank you very much, Prof. Pat Naido, for those words. And in conclusion, as chairman of IEEE South Africa section, on behalf of my executive committee, I would like to take this opportunity to thank members of the Joint Distinguished Volunteer Award Committee, which was chaired by Professor Albert Lisko, for the outstanding work you carried and effectively and with grace carried out over the last 6 months. In alphabetical order of first name, the committee members are Professor Albert Lisko, Dr. David Oyedokun, Professor Nelson Ijumba, Mr. Prince Moyo, Mrs. Prudence Madiba, Mrs. Sai Gora, and Dr. Waynand Lambert. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. David Oyedokun, for doing this part for us. And again, thank you for the contribution in terms of the prize money. So I'd just like to, again, on behalf of myself and council, congratulate Professor Pat Naido on this achievement and well-deserved achievement. And we wish you well and look forward to your continued contribution to the SAIEE and how we take it forward, as you said. Think globally, act locally. Certainly, your prize money will be EFT to you, and the Institute administration will address that with yourselves going forward. So, ladies and gentlemen, we come to general business. Of course, I'd like to ask the audience at large if there's any questions that you'd like to raise under general business, anything that's pressing that you'd like to know, we'll try and answer it. So if Minx and the other colleagues can help us with the questions.
President, there's no questions at the moment.
Are they everybody's hungry, still have to have dinner, or they're very happy with the institute?
No questions, sir.
Okay, if there's no questions, I'd like to now pass on to Minx before we do the final closure and vote of thanks.
Once again, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You will see in the handouts, there is a PDF, an interactive PDF, that is the mailer for the President's inaugural address, which will take place on the 31st of March at 7 p.m. It talks about the industrial revolutions have transformed our societies and the workplace over the years. Hence, the world around us changed fundamentally and will continually change. Digital transformation and how we live, work, socialize, and study. We invite you to attend the SAIE's President's inaugural lecture. Please download the interactive mailer in the handout section, click on the PDF and register to attend. We're looking forward to be hosting you again. Thank you very much. Good evening.
Thank you, Minx. So it's all left for me now basically to thank, of course, our members for their support over the year, and especially those that made a contribution in terms of the subscriptions. We really thank them for that, because that helps us to keep the Institute doing the things we do and need to do. Certainly the visitors and the team for making this webinar possible. And certainly, as the immediate past president mentioned, the administrative staff on the ground there had to work under difficult circumstances, and some of the sacrifices they made over the years so that we could ensure that we have financial sustainability of the Institute going forward. I'd like to thank everybody, and certainly our sponsors, our corporate sponsors. They play an important part in this ecosystem, and we're looking forward to working with everybody so that we can grow our corporate sponsors and they become part of this, so that they lead with us in terms of taking engineering, technology, human capital development forward in the country, so that we become more globally competitive, and of course address the triple negatives we have in the country, which is unemployment, poverty, and inequality. And with those words, I'd like to thank you very much for your time and spending time with us. Please be safe and take care, as the predictions indicate that we may be looking at a third wave. And certainly with the vaccine rollout being kind of stagnant, we all need to be careful going forward. And certainly all the best. Have a good evening. And we hope to see all of you on the 31st of March. Thank you. Goodbye. Take care. God bless.